you very much, Jamie. I appreciate that. That was a better intro than I could probably done for myself. So thank you very much. I actually have the distinct pleasure of introducing our speakers with the experience, Joshua Mailey and Roderick Gardner, who you should be seeing on the screen. I am the business development, essentially director of sales for the whole Chicagoland area. Joshua and Roderick are the ones with the experience in protecting and providing security in the whole Chicagoland area. Joshua is more familiar with the suburbs and Roderick's more familiar with the downtown area. And they both have experience of over 30 plus years in either law enforcement or just providing security to the Chicagoland area. And it would help if you've seen their pictures aside from their face. Well, there they are. So I am simply just going to do a little bit of engagement for everyone. And on the chat, please feel free to jump in as far as any questions, any comments, things that you'd like answered. We'd love to do a Q&A also near the end. But I do want to just kind of start some engagement off. So feel free to, just so we kind of know where the audience is at, drop in what city you're chiming in from. Go ahead and pop that into the chat so we can kind of see. And really today we're gonna go over some of those prevention to reaction, the differences between that when you're talking security and the experience. And security with the quote on there, security is not a product but a process. And we kind of like to think about the concentric circles for your security in your property. And really, I'd like to also ask is what is security? What is security to you? The quality or state of being secure is the Webster's dictionary version and terminology. But in the chat, let us know what you feel or what does security really mean to you. I'd like to get the audience kind of engaged so we can kind of see where everybody is at on that. And also, just kind of getting understanding again with the audience. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you feel is your property security? Is it helping bringing really peace of mind to the residents? Because security is, for us at least, is our service, but peace of mind is really our goal. And not just peace of mind for the residents, but also for property managers and the management staff, as well as homeowner leaders. So in the chat feature too, also drop in, where you feel like that security level or that scale of security is. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of bring in the security experts.
Thank you, JR.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess I'll start off, Roderick. So security prevention and management prevention steps. I think it's important that first, in order to protect any structure or area or anything of value to us, we have to identify what are those vulnerabilities that what we're protecting has. It's going to be different in different types of communities. Where Roderick deals mostly with our downtown clientele, you're going to have more of a vertical challenge. Normally, we were single or 2 buildings. We're going to have higher floors, smaller maybe land mass footprint that poses other challenges than maybe we have out in the suburbs, where we're more a horizontal landscape and low-rise buildings, but over a vast amount of acreage. So those are going to identify some different vulnerabilities that those 2 structures might have. I think some of the screening of residents and staff, getting a good idea of knowing who works at your in your communities, anywhere from your maintenance team to your leasing professionals, your management companies, or even any vendors really that are coming onto your property and working within your communities is a prevention strategy. And even with your own residents, right? When we start looking at crime-free housing items, right? Making sure our background checks are in place, and we know who are working and living in our communities. And conducting, of course, property safety checks, from health and safety to crime-free housing type things like lighting and proper functioning of those, Of course, a good security company or professional or a consultant can come in and help with all of those issues and help identify some of those strategy vulnerabilities and put strategies together for you. And then different ways that we can do that, and for security patrols, very big in the suburbs because of the land mass that we have to cover, to maybe dedicated or concierge type services in your more vertical structures. And then, of course, making sure that your employees and any security officers are just easily visible to not only your community to get us help with any items, and who's your property manager, who's your maintenance guys that can be easily seen, to even who's your security officers that you can come to and help with. So I think those are some things that we could take a look at on a management side, in just beginning to understand your security needs as you're going along. And I'll turn that over to Rod to understanding your protocols.
Hello, everybody. So what we do downtown Chicago, especially with door staff or patrol services and with your concierge services, is make sure that our concierge, our door staff, are identifying residents as they buzz them in, that they are calling security, are calling police or emergency service when needed. Also, that staff is trained in emergency services so that if anything goes wrong with your property, that they immediately notify those that are on our contact list. So what we're looking to do from the concierge staff is give you a 24-hour snapshot from your front desk about the conditions of your community. And that goes from personnel to lighting to maintenance. So we train our personnel to identify problems. They report those problems each and every hour. If there's a problem, they find resolutions and make sure they're talking to the people that can resolve those issues on a daily basis. This way you can identify coming in the door in your portal each morning the points of interest that you may have to invest some time in that day. Okay. Door staffs also receive packages, so we have to identify, put up, log in, and track those packages that come into our facilities. So what we try to do from the front desk, from door staff, is give you, like I said, that 24-hour snapshot of what's going on in your facility from the maintenance point of view, from a tenant's point of view, and from a security point of view, so that eases your mind to the day of what you have to do. If there's a tenant that's locked out, we have procedures for that. If there are tenants that are picking up packages, we have procedures for that. So what we try to do is make sure that anything that's noticeable that you are contacted on or that you know about as you enter your office for the day. So that's what we do with our verticals downtown. We have hybrid too. We have where we do door staff and also patrol services. And that may include your parking lot areas or the front or back of the building where you have egress for your residents, making sure that some facilities have the little dog parks outside of the facility. We monitor those and we make sure that nobody's egressing those areas without being identified by personnel. So these are the things we think that you look for in a company that is securing your facility. And these are the things we try to provide inside those sites.
And then obviously there are proper notifications and security tips. It's best to understand your security protocols, ensuring that your employees and your residents all have a basic understanding of your security protocols. They should know maybe emergency evacuation points, preparedness procedures, knowing where fire equipment are, or how to get in touch with someone when there is a problem, maybe in the unit, in the area. Could be anything from, fire to loss of power to maybe a security concern, like a suspicious person or an incident, things of that nature. Keeping your common areas secure. Obviously, in your downtown vertical structures, you're going to have more perimeter type security, where locking doors and checking docking stations and trash bins and things like that. and then maybe in your suburban markets or when you have more of a horizontal area, you're going to have more areas to decide. Maybe you have a gated community, making sure those gates are in proper order and functioning well, or locking up your amenities, your offices on site. What do you do after hours if there's an issue? Having those protocols in place for you, and then the proper notifications on who to notify. Who do you notify during the day versus who do you notify overnight? Property managers, you're all very busy during the day. You got to get some sleep. You have your own families too. So identifying then what's important to you that you need to be notified in the middle of the night, whereas that's something that can be weighted to maybe to the next day for you to deal with. Having those protocols put in place, so maybe you're not getting notifications or calls all night for things that just aren't really all that emergent in nature. Cameras are great pieces of your puzzle. I like to see cameras are your eye in the sky. They are your post-event evaluation tools. They are great tools for after a crime has occurred for law enforcement officials to maybe look for clues or evidence based in some prosecution. They're all great, but they come with their own set of protocols as well. Placement is good. How many, where you're placing them. Lots of people like to think, oh, I'm going to put them up as high as possible, but then you're not getting a lot of facial recognition to even where you might want to place a camera at an entry point or a gateway. We're looking at maybe some license plate reading type things where we can log in who's coming in, who's going within our properties. Those are all good pieces of the puzzle when you're looking at a security protocols. And then, of course, putting some safety tips to your staff and residents. Maybe it's a newsletter, maybe it's a quarterly newsletter, a monthly newsletter, just something to kind of point out some things, maybe things that are going in the communities. I know a few things that are going on, even in my own neighborhoods. Catalytic converter thefts are really big right now. Vehicle thefts, even vehicle hijacking in the city and branching out into the suburbs. Our dealership partners are getting hit with lots of car thefts. Those cars that are being stolen are being used in other crimes that may affect your communities and your residents. So keeping things that are knowing what's going on in your community as a whole, whether they directly affect your community or not, could be good information to keeping you and your residents safe. And then, of course, looking at some controlled access control, like door key fobs, access control, things like that, things that you might want to lock out or have open just for your residents, or maybe you want to have your facilities like your workout gyms or your pools closed up at a certain period of time. Access control devices are great tools for that as well. And then it's great for key management too, because in an electronic environment, you can always disable immediately, whereas trying to retrieve a key might become a bigger process.
And then Josh, Roderick, we do have a question kind of relating towards the controlled access. How do you kind of maybe combat or advise property managers to combat the sharing of their key codes and piggybacking, for example?
Piggybacking it's tough. You're looking at two different environments as well. You have door piggybacking or gate piggybacking. I know in some of these gated communities, you can come up as a resident, you hit your key fob, the gate opens. Gate takes time to open, it takes time to close. It's really what's preventing piggybacking coming in and out of there. Depending on your threat levels and where your comfort levels are, there are things that we can do to monitor that. Anywhere from license plate reading cameras placed strategically at gates and doors, so that we can notify it, we can see it, to anything from roving vehicle patrols and your concierge or your door staff, just being advised that these things are happening and when they're happening. When you bring electronics together with the human aspect, you can solve a lot of problems as opposed to one over just the other. Taking an account, let's take for instance a gated community with a gate, and we have vehicles coming in. If I have a license plate reading camera and I have a key fob, the key fob is being registered on the back end of your computer servers, date, time, and who it is. And then we have license plate reading cameras as well, so that we can see who's coming in and who's coming out afterwards. And then if you have a good security team on property, they can be made aware of that. And then we could take a look, at the time that it's happening. But like anything, there is no way to 100% prevent anything. And, we have to understand that when we're putting these procedures and policies in place and coming up with strategies, nothing is ever going to be 100%. And we don't want to set ourselves up for failure to think that there's not a way, but we can control some of the things that are going on. And even if it's just giving us some more information so that we can make intelligent decisions on how we're going to handle it down the line.
Okay, and the way we look at piggybacking inside our taller sites, our high rises, is that the desk staff has to be trained very well to pick up on individuals that might piggyback with your residents going into the doors after they're swiping. But it does start with the residents. The residents also have to be notified and identify people that are not with their parties, so that the door staff knows who to stop and once that party has started to enter the facility. And like Josh said, nothing's 100%, but we can get control of our doors and our electronic areas if we first start talking to our residents that are in the building and making sure they're notified of the do's and don'ts and the safety issues of just allowing people to piggyback behind them or to access areas without their code keys. And we see this a lot with residents allowing their friends or different family members to access different areas of our sites without that resident being, with them. This is an issue that we deal with, that a lot of the high rises deal with on a consistent basis. So I would say first, we get to the residents, we get to the door staff, we make sure each of them are aware and advised of the do's and don'ts, the times and limitations of where guests should be. And then we cut down on a lot of that. A lot of what we do now, we don't have keys anymore. We have access cards. So the access cards do not have names on them. So, and then they do register on the back of our service. So we do know if a resident has given somebody their access key, when that amenity has been accessed, maybe during hours or after hours, if something goes on there, we can identify who, what, and where, along with the access keys, the camera, and the door staff. So these are the things that we try to implement and train and make sure that everybody's aware of what we should do, and become safer inside our environment. And we properly train our door staff, and they're properly licensed, and they do a lot of pre-education from us and ongoing education as they are with our employment. So you get a very good door staff with residents that have been advised with issues, like Josh said, issues that are in the area, and advised of what they should and should not do. Then we cut down on a lot of the piggybacking and a lot of people in areas that they should not be in.
Great, Roderick. And then we do have another question that came through, and this kind of relates to the controlled access. But one person's asking about Ring doorbells and if they violate the neighbor's privacy and if they're allowed. Do you guys have any thoughts or ideas on how to possibly handle that?
Yes. So it's a tough one. State of Illinois had recently changed the laws in recordings, where it used to be a two-party consent state to record, and a lot of times instances that is still true. However, that's only really true when there's an expectation of privacy, and that's kind of like the litmus test here. Do you have an expectation of privacy when you're in a public area? Probably not so much. Does that mean that someone can invade your privacy and stand over and listen to a private conversation you're having, at a low volume with someone? No, not necessarily. So when you're looking at a Ring doorbell camera, if this is placed normally, where a doorbell would be facing outside to where the general public would be anyway, then really your expectation of privacy is not a case. Now, I could always take my Ring doorbell camera and place it in an appropriate placement where I'm focusing it directly into maybe a neighbor's window or something of that nature. Then you would be saying that, hey, yes, even though this isn't a public place, it is directly impeding my privacy, and that would be an issue. That would be really honestly something that would have to be looked at case by case basis. And then obviously, if you're a community discussing the use of Ring doorbells in your community, you might want to bring that to your legal department. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a retired law enforcement officer, a security professional. I can tell you on the law enforcement side what we would do, but any legality questions, is this legal, is this not legal, you should always refer back to an attorney. If your board is having a question, maybe bring that up to the attorney there. But the litmus test there is where's that reasonable expectation of privacy, right? Even in law enforcement, we have a thing where we used to say that wherever the mailman can go, we can, right? So if the mailman, you would expect a mailman come up to your door and drop a package off or deliver some mail, then that's probably not an area where you would expect some privacy, all right? If that makes sense. I hope I answered that question enough for you.
Appreciate it. And then one more, and then we'll move on. But back to the piggybacking and trailers, essentially people that kind of come in behind. For a senior community building, how would you kind of confront the stranger, or would you even suggest staff confront the stranger? What's the direction you would kind of provide to that? And Roderick, feel free to jump in if you have anything on that as well.
Okay, so if we've got access, what we try to do is separate parties. So what you try to do by accessing the front desk, then we try to get all one party together so we know that party's together, so nobody's piggybacking off of that party. Okay, rear access is a little different. Rear access should always be accessed by either key or control card with a camera on that access door. Okay, so if it's controlled by a key card or a key, then we should just about have just the residents or staff or maintenance using those doors. And we ask, and many of our building managers ask, that all tenants enter through the entryway to the building, unless necessary to exit to a parking lot or to the rear to take out trash. So in a rear access point of view, we don't want the tenants really using those doors unless it's necessary for an emergency situation or access to a parking garage. And then they should all have access cards or keys. And once again, going back to the residents, be absolutely tied into the building to know that they're not to give those keys or access cards to anyone else. And that stops a lot of that piggybacking. Better staff, better control by the residents, and you don't get a lot of piggybacking.
And I think when we're talking about confrontation, really we want to prevent confrontation in a negative way, because we never know how the other person is going to react to us, right? So let's take in two situations. I'm coming through my door at this community, and maybe my neighbor is piggybacking next to me. Does that really require a confrontation? No. I mean, we know they're there. If it's an issue, you could always bring that to the property management's office and discuss, your concerns, as you always should. But then when we're talking about maybe a resident coming in and a stranger piggybacking back to them, I would say that's probably more of a thing where you should be notifying someone else, maybe property management, maybe a building engineer, security if you have it, or even if it's after hours, you don't have security, then maybe law enforcement, because we don't know what a stranger is doing in the building, right? That stranger may be just visiting his parents that happen to be there, but you don't know. I think one has to be very careful when you're confronting with a stranger, because you don't know what type of response that you're going to get. So I would say always protect yourself first. Be aware, maybe being aware more often than not. You can see that maybe somebody's lingering around the building or around this door that may be waiting for you to come in and then piggybacking with you. Don't go in. Maybe find another route around, or maybe make a phone call, even if it's to the police or security, again, to come and check before they even gain access in the first place. That's just more situational awareness. But if it actually does happen, I would say protect yourself first, go home, and then you can make a notification that, hey, this happened, somebody followed you into the building, then maybe there's an unauthorized person in the building. Let police or security first and foremost handle it, or maybe some building staff if they're around. But I would strongly suggest that you really think twice about placing yourself in any potential harm in confronting somebody.
Perfect. So let's go ahead and move on before we get stuck on this one slide. But this kind of merges into the proper notification and security tips. But what's and we kind of went through some of these points already, but what's something maybe as a property manager or homeowner leader, what can you advise the residents aside from what you already talked about, but with regards to some of these points as well? And then Roderick or Josh, feel free to jump in.
Okay, when you post emergency information, what you do want staff to be trained in is what they should report, what goes into a report, when they should notify emergency services. So all that's printed out is posted for them. It's either in a red book for them at the desk, and that information keeps our building safe. And that information, some of that information should also be disseminated to the residents. What to do in case of emergency, what does the staff do if the alarm bells go off on the charter outside of the facility. So this is information that the staff has. This is what they're trained in, and this is what they're trained to do. Who to notify and after hours, who to notify when a property manager is there, but in a meeting, who to get a hold of, so we have lists for that, and they go straight down a list to notify different individuals depending on the emergency, depending on what's going on, and then identifying what happened inside that emergency so we can go over it later. And maybe we did the right thing this time, maybe we didn't do everything we should have done. We communicate that to the staff. We make sure that it's a positive interaction with the staff in case something goes wrong and we weren't notified, the property manager wasn't notified. So we keep those things up to date. We make sure that the property manager's up to date, or the supervising personnel that is there is up to date on those issues.
I think we talked a little bit about some of these things, like being aware of entrance tailgating, keeping your eyes open, looking for propped open doors or unlocked doors. That's a great one. That one's security staff should be doing anyway, but that doesn't mean you should leave it to security. Right? You see a door that's propped open or unlocked, lock it. I mean, it's pretty simple. When we act as a community, we can be safer as a community if everyone's taking some ownership in the safety and security of their environment. And then, of course, there's always the see something, say something. I think I talked a little about this, about just being aware of your surroundings. Your situational awareness will carry you more than anything else, because you're out there, you're seeing it. The more eyes you have on an issue or a problem or in a community, the better. But you do have to communicate those things. It doesn't do any good if you see all these bad things and don't say anything. And then when we see it on the news all the time, right? Oh, this crime happened, and then you start the news comes out and we start talking to the neighbors, we talk to this, oh yeah, that guy, oh, there were some red flags or all those things, right? Those are the things that were not said 9 times out of 10, right? So if you're seeing it, something, say something, put it into proper reports or notification procedures so that management or security or even law enforcement has some information we can make better decisions on. And of course, encourage your residents to meet your neighbors. You know, the more we know each other, the more we talk, the more information we have, the better decisions we can make. And of course, with your personal property, please lock your doors. Don't leave high value items in your vehicles. Lock your vehicle doors. Don't leave change or your wallet or your camera or your door clicker or your garage door opener visible inside your vehicle. A lot of these crimes that we're seeing in these neighborhoods are crimes of opportunity. You know, kids, younger juveniles walking through an area, finding open car, going through it. Oh, there's a garage door opener. I'm going to open the garage, take something out of the garage, and I'm going to be on my way. If we take responsibility for our own things, keeping these things out of sight, out of mind, and secured, most of the time you're not going to see window breakings and you know, doors pried open and things like that. Not most of the time, they're just crimes of opportunity. So, you know, take care to keep your stuff and your personal property secured.
Now, Josh, is kind of more directed towards you as well, but to me, it kind of sounds like it's mostly communication, especially towards the residents, especially for Roderick. You know, he's up in the high rises. They probably have on staff personnel and management team. And then, you know, we do have some people on here too that property managers or homeowner leaders that more than likely they don't have on-site staff.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say kind of that communication strictly to the residents is going to be key to the concentric circles of security?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can do the best that I can, and my team can do the best that they can to know and learn your property. And we do it in a rather quick time frame, but I'll never know your property like someone who lives there. I'll never know your neighbors like you will. And I'll never know what's suspicious and what's not suspicious because you're in that environment. When you live there, you know more about your environment, your area, your community than anyone else will. So passing that information along certainly helps in a more directive patrol, if you will. Law enforcement does this quite a bit. When we do general patrolling, I'm assigned a beat, I'm assigned an area, I'm going to drive around and I'm going to look for my general things that I know as a policeman who knows this area, and I'm going to look for those things. Directed patrol is a different thing. Directed patrol is, hey, we have some information that this is going on in this area, keep an eye out for it. I'm going to go to that area and I'm going to specifically look for those things. So that's the difference between your general patrol and your directive patrol. And we could certainly do that better in your wider, open, horizontal communities where we have participation from not only management, but management staff and the community. It only betters the service for sure.
Great. So let's move on. And again, a lot of what you're probably noticing is that what we're talking about spans every part of security. So example, external and internal threats. We just kind of talked a little bit about that, but Roderick and Josh, can you jump in on maybe focusing more on those potential internal threats?
Okay, your internal threats would be, most of the time, it'd be somebody getting in the building that should not be there, or it would be a person that was let in by another resident. So what we want to do, we want to make sure that when we're leaving, we lock our doors. We want to make sure that when we're exiting our apartments, that the hallways are clear. You know, usually we rush right out, close the door behind us, and bang, we're into something we shouldn't be. So once you walk out the door, it kind of peep around the corners, make sure that you're clear, that you see people that you usually see every day or bump into on a daily basis. And if you do see something suspicious or see something that makes your hair stand on end, that you walk back into your apartment, that you take that sixth sense that we all have and you use it. If it feels funny to you, walk back in. If somebody's standing there and they feel funny to you, walk back into your unit. We also want to be aware of coming up on elevators, you know, so most of our elevators in our units are covered by camera. So we want to make sure that we are in that camera view, especially if we're in that elevator with people we don't know. We want to make sure that if you feel funny about stepping out of that elevator by yourself because someone's there, that you take it back to the ground floor, get back to maybe the desk staff or somewhere else where you feel safer. So we want to make sure that we're using that sixth sense to our ability to stay safe and not just saying, oh, well, I feel funny, but I just, you know, overlook this. Let's not overlook those things, especially in an urban society and especially in a rural or a society that stretches out for, you know, for a couple of blocks or so. We want to make sure that we stay aware of what's going on around us, who's around us, the people we see every day, the people we might see sometimes. And the best way we do this, like Josh says, is kind of get to know your neighbors. Kind of hello here, hello there. If it's just a wave, so you start identifying who's on that floor, who's in this section of the community, what kind of cars that are coming in and out. This information you take in every day, and you can use that to stay safe inside your community.
I'll just reiterate, trust your gut. Trust it. It really means a lot.
So we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk more of the common challenges that we see within property management and security. And before I kind of do that, though, I kind of wanted to get your guys' thoughts because, you know, we talked about, hey, here's what you could possibly do as far as property management, but from a perspective of, you know, what's kind of in it for me, essentially, with property managers, you know, I hear it all the time. Hey, security is going to help with retention, really, and peace of mind. So what's Roderick and Josh, your thoughts on what really the security and providing peace of mind helps with property managers and homeowner leaders?
What security does, it first of all, good security gives you a sense of well-being, that somebody's there, that somebody's watching. The other point of security, it also gives you another set of eyes for maintenance issues. That's from irrigation to your electrical systems. They're your first line of defense. So they see it before anybody else. And that personnel that's in that building, if you have personnel on site, you want them to take ownership of that site while they're there. So if it's a maintenance issue, the snow hasn't been shoveled coming, they're walking in the door, that should be reported. The lights are out in the elevator, those should be reported. If we have stuff that's on the floor, we report that to maintenance. So your security team works hand in hand with the property management team to make the building safe, secure, and healthy. If we do those things, then the property manager has a lot less to worry about because she knows if this section of lights goes out, then it's going to be reported. And with our teams, it's going to be reported until it gets fixed. So you will know the day it went out, you will know the day it's fixed, and it will be in that legend until it is fixed. If we notify you, we'll keep notifying you until the problem is fixed. And that's the same way with a resident. If they see something, gym equipment or something that's broken, once we report it, we'll ask again, has that been fixed? No, it hasn't, we will re-report. But what we try to do is give that management team a sense of what needs to be done, what has been done, and the time frame it took it to be done. And that's also works well with the residents because they see the building being maintained. They see the door staff reporting and being responsive to their needs, which leads to retention over the years in buildings.
I like to say that security works hand in hand with the property management office. We want to provide the best return on an investment for that service that we can for our property managers, right? Because it is about the community. And when you have a safe community that's well lit, feel safe, that they know someone's out there watching for them, then that's where people want to live. Nobody really wants to live in an area where they don't feel safe. Even if it's just from regular crime, when we could put that aside for a second, but even just that their concerns are being heard, that their neighbors are being respectful of each other, things like, let's just say quality of life issues, neighbor complaints, noise complaints, maybe disputes, parking issues. Those are the things that people want. They want to come home from working and leave their stress behind. They just want to be able to come to their home and then unwind, raise their families in a safe environment. If they don't feel safe in your community, they're going to find another community to go to. So when we identify things like, following rules, parking in the right places, that your amenities are closed and checked when they're supposed to be so that they're not being used after hours or abused. Or if you have areas where, you can rent out for parties and things like that, that they're being left in good condition, that they're clean, that they didn't get out of hand, things like that affect the rest of the community. When you focus on the residents and their quality of life, then they want to stay. And I think that has absolutely everything to do with retention in that community, for sure.
Awesome. Roderick, Josh, thank you very much for that. So let's go ahead and jump into some of the common security challenges that we as security professionals kind of see through the different properties, whether it's the high rise to mid rise, the garden level, or spread out homeowner associations, things of that nature. So let's jump into that. I know we have what you're seeing is the 8 common challenges, from suspicious activity to property ordinance management, vehicle issues, to amenities checks, like you were just talking about, Josh. The controlled access is definitely part of that security, and then lighting maintenance, like Roger was talking about, and then of course the unauthorized visitors and monitoring systems. We're going to kind of just breeze a little bit over this, just because we've already talked about a lot of this, but these are essentially the 8 common challenges that we see on property management. So let me go ahead and jump to the next slide. But Josh, with suspicious activity.
Yeah, suspicious activity can be really kind of anything, right? I remember coming on the job, many years ago as a young police officer, and one of the first things, when you're trained and you're set loose on your own, getting in this police car and thinking, well, now what? And what does suspicious even mean? So it can mean different things in different locations and in different properties. It's really about that unique community, that unique property that you're at, and really the only way you can do that is to be engaged in the normal day-to-day activities surrounding this community or where you live, and that happens over time. When you know what's normal, what's not normal stands out greatly, right? And when those things stand out to you that just don't seem right, then that where you start becoming into suspicious. Well, what is actually going on there? Sometimes it just turns out to be absolutely nothing. It was just an anomaly of the daily activity, or in other times it can be predicate to criminal activity. Really, so just your engagement in your own community and your situational awareness and what's going on in and around you means a lot, and then you'll be able to identify what's not right, and then you can make reporting on that.
Awesome. And then Roderick, do you have anything to chime in as far as what for downtown and the high rises can help, aside from what we just talked about already?
Well, like Josh was saying, suspicious activity is usually something that does not happen in that community. And we have lots of different communities. So when we're better engaged, as Josh said, with our community and with our residents, then we can spot that suspicious activity, something that may happen this day, but it's just like Josh said, an anomaly that doesn't happen much. But once the staff is engaged, your security team, if you have one, is engaged, your maintenance team has to be engaged. So it takes all spheres of property management to be engaged in the community to keep it safe, from maintenance to security to the PMs to whoever is doing day-to-day work, even your team that's outside. They have to be engaged. Once we're engaged in our community, then we make our community safer. We discourage people that shouldn't be there. We identify problems as they're happening or before they occur. And if they do occur, we're on top of those things that are happening, and we take care of them so the other people that are coming into our community see that we value our community. And that keeps down that element of people coming in that want to do things that are not quite nice inside our sites or in our communities.
I just want to make a point. Go back to that slide. One more, please. Thank you. I just want to make a huge point right here in this slide where security discourages criminal activity and increases value. Maybe. And the reason I'm going to say is maybe is because I've seen over the course of the years that we've done this in different ways, right? Different communities can do this in different ways. Security can discourage criminal activity and increase your value only when it's highly visible and acting in a deterrent, okay? If you have, I've seen communities that have, oh, well, we have a resident officer. And the resident officer, what that really means is they've given a discounted rate in the rent or some way to some person that they feel like might be able to kind of help. And in my experience, law enforcement and private security and doing this for a long time, it absolutely does not, because what we think is happening isn't actually happening, okay? When there are no controls in how security is being done, in the visibility of it, and then the actual reporting of it, then really we're just kidding ourselves that this is actually working for us, that it's doing something for our community, and we're throwing money down the toilet. And that's the last thing I ever want to see anybody do, right? We all work very hard for our money. Our communities work very hard for money, and our money can be spent in many different ways, especially when we're working in a multifamily community, right? So we have to ensure that the money that we are spending is actually giving us the return that we're looking for, if not more, okay? If your security is not out there and it's visible, that your community can see it and engage with it, that the ne'er-do-wells who are looking from the outside inside can't see it to prevent from doing it, then what are we really getting? We're getting false sense of security and a false sense of hope. And it's really imperative that we understand that the visibility of our security teams and our security protocols and process, it makes a huge difference. I don't know where this whole covert thing came from. Maybe it came from, well, you know, the police do these covert stings and these covert operations, and they do, and there's a place and time for those, but those are in long-term investigations where we're looking to solve an overall problem or target a certain organization or individuals, right? But you don't see your communities being policed by your local police department in undercover, unmarked, plainclothes policemen everywhere, right? And that should tell you something, right? Because it's not really done that way. We need the police to be visible. You need your security teams to be visible, okay? We're not doing some secret covert super spy stuff here, right? We're protecting and interacting with a community to get the best results out of that. And if you don't know where security is and you can't see security, then you can't engage with security. If you can't engage security, then we're not getting the information that we need to better do directive patrolling for you and your community. So please, I just wanted to drive really home that security must be high visible. And if it's not high visibility, then you're probably not getting what you think you're getting.
That's a great point, Josh. And I think too, we'll probably get into this in the next couple of slides, but that also kind of goes with, as far as property managers, you know, the care of your community and the environment that you're putting in place, because you essentially want to have your property have the understanding from people that are bad actors that are looking in, criminals looking in, that go someplace else. We have a high visible security, or we keep our community up where, you know, if you're coming on property, there's not areas that you can just hide in, or brush that you can hide in. But we'll get into that a little bit later. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, and I don't want to get too far ahead of our time. But when we also talk maybe about property ordinance and maintenance, how does that kind of fall in place with security?
Well, rule following. I mean, we all have these communities where we have lots of people living in a small geographic area. There are going to be problems. It's just part of the human experience, right? So we all have rules to follow in our communities that are laid out for the reason. And then when we don't follow those rules, then we start having conflict and escalated to greater problems. So what we try and do is to have security interact with their property management on what the ordinances are, what the rules and regulations are, whether that be noise or parking or garbage, those types of things, anything, or even just proper use of the facilities that we all share. It sets a lot when those expectations are out there and there is an enforcement piece, and then people understand and know what the rules are, then we can operate with those rules for the overall greater good and of the community. And then again, that does help with, absolutely helps with retention.
Roger, do you have anything to fill in?
And I have the same feeling as Josh have. What happens with our communities is that once the residents report maybe a loud noise complaint, a garbage complaint, those situations are taken care of. If they have staff on site where they can call the desk and say, hey, Unit 505 is having a log party, maybe the concierge staff can call up and say, hey, can you turn the music down? But it's documented. And once it's documented and brought to the PMs, that the PMs are their management team investigates, they reach back out to the residents, even as if nothing. Hey, we got the complaint was resolved that evening, but we are aware of that situation. So once they get the communication piece, and it's the communication piece, like Josh said, is the best kind of security in our sites, whether it is high rises, whether there are HOAs, communicating between the residents, the staff, that keeps us safe. And once that the concerns of the residents, that they know somebody's going to follow up with them on these things, issues such as noise, trash, vandalism. Once they see that happening, they tend to take better care of their community. Say some graffiti is left in one of the elevators or written on one of the walls. They notify the PM notifies the maintenance staff, and that's removed over the next 24 or 48 hours. They see what they say is important. So when they start getting a sense of that, they get a sense of this is home. So once you have that going through your community, you have a safer, better, cleaner community, and it works out for everybody much, much better.
Perfect, thank you. So then vehicle issues and the challenges of vehicles, especially for Chicago and with our weather, and how can that be a challenge for property management?
Well, when we're talking, yeah, I think it's just I think it's a geographical space issue, right? Some of our communities that we work with have sprawling parking lots, and sprawling parking lots are great because there's more spaces, but they do offer more places to hide, more potential criminal activity, more potential places to feel unsafe, more lighting, more everything. And then in other communities, maybe parking is very scarce, and everyone needs to park in their assigned spots, or within a geographic area. You can't have one office or one apartment or condo or townhouse that maybe that has 10 vehicles when really we're only authorizing 2, or broken down vehicles, things that'll lower your property values, or just even the perception of the value of your property, right? It's when we have rentals or we're selling condos and townhomes, people going to drive through there prior to making a decision whether they want to live there or not, to see what's going on there. Maybe they're going to do it during the day and they're going to come back during the evening before they sign a lease or a contract to purchase a home. I know I want to be safe, and I want my children to be safe, and I want my family members to be safe. So I'm going to take a look at that prior to. If I see things like garbage overflowing, broken down vehicles, or illegally parked cars or things like that, those are going to be red flags for me. And I may pass on a property and not even come in to speak with the property manager or office staff, and not even consider it because it's a perceived value, right? You may have the greatest amenities in the world, but if it doesn't look like the community is being taken care of, I'm just going to move on to somewhere that does. So it's kind of one of those things where you don't know what you're missing out on, because they're not even considering you just by their perceived value. So I think we need to take a look and make sure that we are understanding that as well, and how fast we are correcting those issues so that we can increase our own perceived values.
And then Roderick, you have a good amount of pool clients as well. It's pool season right now. Amenities checks that you kind of help out with. When it comes to security, they're the ones that can sometimes go check the pool, because I know with property management, you get a glass broken in the pool, that can be an issue. So when it comes to security can also be the ones checking all this, correct?
Yes, we have pool personnel that over the summer, they are assigned to our pool. So we don't let any glass on our decks at that point. But once again, we do notify, and the residents and our property managers are very good about notifying the residents of what they can and cannot take on our pool decks. So we don't have a lot of those problems with new people. We do ask that they open pools and make sure that we don't have glass. We do the officers that are out there conduct, on-spot checks and make sure that we have wine bottles now that are plastic that look like glass. We check those. So what we try to do is make sure, first of all, everybody, if they issue bans for the swimming area that they have on their vans, or have their vans with them, that the residents know there's no glass or horseplay or cannonballs in the pool. Once the residents have the rules, then we enforce them. Once the rules are broken, we notify management that this and this has happened. And then management, most of our PMs are good about getting back to the residents about incursions of the rules on our pool decks. So this is the way we combat that problem. So we ask them not to bring anything down that's very valuable, as they might be swimming or talking to other residents, and so that merchandise or those items aren't taken. So we try to make sure that the officers walk the decks at least 3-4 times an hour, making sure they're talking to the residents, engaging with them. Once again, communication is the key, and we try to keep that communication up so we know what is happening. And, even with the bungalows that they may rent out, that we're notified how many people are coming down, what kind of party they're having, and so that they don't step on other residents that are just trying to enjoy the pools for those periods of time.
And then with controlled access, we talked highly about this, so we're going to go ahead and breeze through. We want to respect everybody's time, so we're going to go ahead and move along. If you do have any questions, comments, feel free to drop that into the chat. We did talk a little bit about the lightning maintenance. As security, that not just having possibly a security team, but that goes with everybody within your property management, or if it's just you, tapping into that resident communication so that they can provide that information to you, so you can make sure you have a well-lit or well-looking community.
And I'll stop you right there just for a brief second. your security teams are generally going to be out there mostly overnight. That seems to be where property managers not there. We want to bring the peace of mind to the property managers, their staff, and of course their communities being first and foremost. But lighting is huge, very big security issue, as well as just beautification. When you have lights out, it's very difficult to know during the day, during regular business hours, except for maybe Northern Illinois winter hours. It seems like we go to work when it's dark and we leave when it's dark. But your security team should be out there looking at those lighting too, and then giving a report back so that your maintenance staff can make those repairs as soon as possible.
Perfect. And then again, we did talk about unauthorized visitors and just making sure, your property as being secure as possible. And of course, as well, you have the monitoring systems in place, or having it in place to be part of your concentric circles. Or if that goes out, having the backups, having the protocols in place that if that ever does go out, what's the next step? So you have those in place, and having a plan and making sure your staff has the knowledge of what's going to happen next then. So, we talked a lot about security. We've nailed home a lot about, what can you do as far as property manager, homeowner leaders. But okay, so what about when you're not on property, or if it is an offsite, what can you do to make sure, or even having to possibly choose and having an understanding of what type of security you need. So Josh, I don't know if you want to run through some of this as far as the different categories that could be out there, and then also talking about the security company. And I did hear about one incident out in Atlanta, so I'll bring that up once we get to the security companies and licensing.
Yeah, I think you need to understand that quite often when we're having conversations about security, I'll often get questioned, how much do you charge for this? And this is what I want. And my first question is that what you want, or is that what you need? And they're two different things, because sometimes we get in the habit of just that's the way it's always been, and not taking a deeper understanding of what it is that the objective we're trying to achieve. And there can be two very different things. And I'll explain it this way. When I work in a Section 8 very rough community to try and implement security, that is going to be a different approach than I'm going to take than when I'm discussing a luxury community or A-plus property. They're just two very different needs, and they're two very different strategies that we need to take a look at. So we first have to just basically understand, what are your needs? What are you looking at to get out of this? And then how can we best fulfill those needs while respecting a budget and a timeline that your community has? So we need to have a conversation about your community and how your community works, how your office works, what things you have on your property. Maybe parking is a huge issue. Maybe parking is an issue we need to discuss. Maybe you have lots of amenities that we need to discuss. Every property is like a fingerprint, right? They're very unique in a lot of different ways. So we need to understand that first before we can even say that you need dedicated, you need roving, you need a hybrid, or even explaining what all these things mean. We can do that once we have a better understanding of what your needs are. Choosing a security company is extremely important, because there are a lot out there. Anywhere from, very expensive high-end stuff to very, very low end, give you the lowest possible rate. And you really need to consider what you're doing other than just throwing money at a problem. You really want to make sure that your security providers are licensed. This is a huge thing. All of us must have a license, and there are different levels of licensing in the state of Illinois, and you have to understand those differences are and what those licenses allow us to do legally. You need to make sure that these are properly insured. The state requires our licenses to be active only if we have the state minimum insurance. But the state minimum insurance may not be enough for what your property requires, or your management company requires, or your board requires. So we have to match those up to make sure that we're giving you the proper coverage with the proper planning. And of course, there's officers, the trained officers. The state mandates a certain minimum level of training. So you need to ask, what above and beyond training do you provide your officers and how often? And then of course, different business types, right? You're going to have anywhere from your giant security companies like Allied and Securitas, the big end providers. You're going to get that corporate feel. You might get a lower rate, but you're going to have lots of high turnover. You're going to have questions and concerns that may not go answered or may take a very long time to get answered because there is no one point of contact for you. So you have to understand when you do have a problem, and all communities are going to have a problem, and security should be a give and take on both ends, the flow of information. Who are you talking to? Who is going to respond to you? And what's that timing going to look like? Some things can wait. Other times, these are issues that need to be addressed right away, and we need to fix it. So you have to understand what type of reaction and what type of response are you going to get from your security provider. Then you're going to have smaller mom and pop type shops that are going to be great on communication, but maybe they just don't have the experience. Maybe they don't have the financial backing. Maybe they don't have the insurance, proper insurance. Maybe they don't have everything they can get, the technology maybe that they can have, or connections in the community, in law enforcement, or even in the security world, to be able to provide the best service for you. And then of course you have anything in between, like franchise owners like Roderick and I, who are part of a much larger, bigger corporate structure, but we have that smaller local feel where you're going to get that response, you're going to get that experience, but we do have the financial backing to handle, and the technology to handle lots of issues.
Now, Josh, I recently read a news article with regards to an Atlanta police department where they actually arrested an armed security officer. Now, if I'm a property manager kind of looking at that, what's maybe some of the questions I should kind of be asking if I want to look into a possible security team or security company?
When we're talking about armed, I don't just throw armed officers out there. Absolutely don't. We have to understand, again, we go back to understanding your property's needs. Is that a need for your community? And now again, when I was working in Section 8 properties, yeah, you know what? The crime rate is so high that, yeah, you're going to have to look at maybe some armed officers and how you're going to do them in teams or things like that, and the hours and the training. But you have to understand what the laws are as well. Not only just the laws in the state of Illinois, and security requires different things that take time to have an armed security officer. And is that really necessary in your community? It's a scary thing. And then just to have, I don't know exactly what happened in Atlanta, so I'm certainly not going to speak to that specific situation or incident without knowing. But there are extra concerns that we have to take a look at, extra licensing issues and stuff, things that we need to look at in training before we just go sticking somebody with a gun in your community.
And that kind of speaks to, when I'm a property manager, if I'm looking into possible security companies, a security team, can we just get anybody off the street and just put them on there as quote unquote a officer or a guard?
No, absolutely not. The state of Illinois requires all security personnel working for a security company to have a license. When that license is called a PERC, it's called a permanent employee registration card. Most states is just called a guard card, and that requires a certain amount of training from the state, and a background check from the state that's done every 3 years, and of course a fee that has to be paid to the state for that card. And that card is only good every 3 years. So again, the state police has to do another background check. The Illinois Department of Professional Regulation, the same regulating authority that gives property managers their licenses, that gives us ours. So they're the same ones that go through. You cannot just take somebody off the street, call them a security guard, put a security t-shirt on them, and send them out in your community. So it's a recipe for disaster, not only just for your community, but for your liability, for the board, management company, and whoever hired that security person. You really have to take a look at your liability and where does that go. Really having something in writing, what your responsibilities are, and having that communication is extremely important.
So we essentially, we're coming up to the end. We talked a lot about, what you can do as far as property managers, as far as homeowner leaders, what you can kind of advise to your residents. And we just talked a little bit about, what type of either possible security team, if you start looking into that, what you're kind of wanting to look for. But kind of in the end, or the total of it, we're really saying prevention versus the reaction. You're looking at that maximum visibility, that maximum safety. And, Roderick downtown and all the individuals kind of chiming in from high-rise type properties versus those out in more rural or garden or mid-level, that maximum secure or that maximum visibility can be different. But when we're either in the rural area, this is a great example of what you want as far as something high visible, where whichever security company, if you go with a security company, will provide that. Or if you're property management, what you want to do as far as providing an understanding that, hey, my property or my community has the things in place that show we have a deterrence, we have control accesses in place, we have security or concierge up front that are going to be asking and saying hello and being friendly. But then if you do have a security team that is actually going to be the ones that maybe make contact with an individual, but also have the training to maybe de-escalate a situation. So it's security, kind of going all the way back to that slide. What is security, and what does it really mean as far as security for your residents? So kind of wrapping everything up now. We'll bring Jamie back on, but if there's any additional questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to chime that in. Let us know. We've kind of taken a good about hour and 15 minutes of the day, but I think Josh and Roderick, I think you guys would kind of say security isn't necessarily just the service that we provide. It is the peace of mind that we're trying to provide either to the residents, but also to those that are managing the properties, because we want to be able to lift as much stress, as much burdens off of your guys' hands when it comes to providing that peace of mind to your residents. So feel free, again, if you guys have any questions, comments, please feel free to chime that in. I'll leave some of my contact information as well. But Jamie, I'm going to be tossing it back over to you. If you have
I just want to one more thing here. Security is not a set it and forget it type of service. It is something that has to be continuously looked at, continuously interacted with. It is a procedure. It is a service. So just don't set it and forget it. Even your electronics, right? They need to be tested. They need to be audited. Things need to be updated. Communication is absolutely paramount. And if you're not communicating with your security provider, you need to find one that will communicate with you, because it is the key to all success. It really is.
Roger, do you have any last words?
I second that with Josh. With security teams, your security systems are interactive. Communication is key to whatever security service, security team you use. So in communication, being interactive, security is a growing vital industry, and it's a growing vital entity among your communities. So it needs to be checked regularly as your systems do. And with that communication, that regular check, you should be okay in your security for your sites.
Awesome. Well, Jamie, I think we're really wrapped up from here. I believe there's going to be the slides available to you guys afterwards that you can retrieve. And then Jamie, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the floor. If anybody has any current questions that they want to go ahead and ask, feel free to chime in, chat in. Well, while we're waiting, Josh, how long have you been doing the security business, and how long, or any past experience that you're like, hey, this is possibly great for the attendees?
Well, I've been in security in one shape or form, in security and service to our country and communities for, well, most of my adult life here. Starting out when I joined the Army out of high school, came out of the Army and went to college and became a local policeman. Retired a few years ago, and been working in the private sector ever since then. And it's great. I mean, I love serving. I love solving problems. I love being there to help, even if it's just a conversation, or hey, it's not something I do, but let me introduce you to someone else who can handle that for you. It's just it's all about networking and really understanding needs and finding good solutions that work. It's going to work on one property and within one budget isn't going to work at another property, another budget. So nothing is cookie cutter in security, and you really shouldn't be seen that way. And if you're not having good, open conversations, and then of course being open to hearing things that maybe you didn't know or didn't consider. There are different ways that we can do these things for you and give you a great security service. Just communicating and being open to both sides, and maybe doing something you didn't think about before.
Perfect. Roderick, any last thoughts?
Yes, before you choose a security company, whether it's us or anybody else, ask a lot of questions. If you think about it, you bring it up, ask the question, because we do have a lot of solutions. If we can't do something, we'll tell you, but ask your questions. Be, like Josh said, be upfront, be honest with what you need versus what you want. So we want to fulfill what you need first. What do you need? What makes your community safer? What makes you feel safer about your community? So just ask a lot of questions. Ask a lot of questions, get a lot of answers, then make a decision on which way you want to go and what services that you truly need.